Welcome to Travel Again Presents, the weekly travel roundup covering the headwinds and tailwinds impacting the business of travel. Please welcome our hosts, Mike McCormick and Ed Synder. Mike, welcome back. How are you today?
Good. How are you doing, Ed?
Doing good. This is episode 2 of our rebooted podcast from a different location today, unfortunately.
Well, and today's opening day of Major League Baseball, so a very exciting day. And I've got my Phillies gear on. We're going to be off to a Hope Springs Eternal for a World Series victory this year.
Always the optimist. Although, what happened? You got rained out for your opening day, Mike? What was going on up there in Philly?
Yeah, well, they were a little precaution. They were just waiting to. They had the extra day of the off day, to play with today, so they just moved it to today. So probably a good idea. The get everybody down there for opening day and have ever rainy day, no fun. So they got a good day today, I think, and. Yeah, we're loaded, man. I'm ready. I'm ready to take it on. Exciting place to watch baseball in good old Citizens Bank Park there in Philly. So I'll be making the pilgrimage up, I'm sure. So
all right. So Mike, our format, just as a reminder, we'll start with 3 or 4 news stories each week with insights and bringing clarity to complex issues as we always do. Today, we have another 2-on-1 interview. We're super excited to bring another guest onto the stage, and then we'll wrap up with headwinds and tailwinds impacting travel as we wrap up our show. And so, Mike, if you're good to go, I'm ready to start the news.
Let's dive in.
All right, Mike, I chose for our first article one of the most major acquisitions in the last period of time. American Express Global Business Travel, Amex GBT acquires CWT. And so let me bring up some news on that. And why don't you tell our audience a little bit about why what CWT and what you think it means for the industry?
Well, it certainly means consolidation, which I think was coming. Even Amex in their briefing, their last quarterly call, talked about the fact that they were looking at acquisitions. So this one was clearly, in the works for a while. It's a big deal and took a lot of work to get there. This has been one where, I would say that the industry speculation and rumors over the years, like that, they've been to the altar multiple times. This is finally getting a deal done that probably everyone expected in some way that it might get done at some point in time. And now that time is here. So assuming all the approvals go through and everything gets buttoned down, which, I can't imagine it won't at this point. But if that's the case, then they will certainly get big. The issue here is one, certainly, getting bigger is critical in terms of, with a lot of the airline changes and negotiating and always pressure on earnings and commissions and business in general. Certainly getting bigger can be a good thing here, certainly for Amex GBT. And I think, that it will probably play out that way. I think it's a very smart move at this stage for them. The interesting thing for me is who we're not talking about and haven't been talking about, which is Navan, which was, the Trip Actions / Navan, they big, huge valuations, big promise, and now radio silence. They've been really quiet on the scene now for a while. There was the IPO that was supposed to come, hasn't come. It again keeps getting kind of pushed out a little further. What's interesting to me is that for all of the buildup about them, brand new platform end to end, I think like initially, again, some of the commentary was, technology was good, but still getting their act together on service and support, et cetera. But really quiet. And what does that mean for them? I think it'll be interesting to see how it plays out as again, you're down to, really a handful of big players at the top end of the market. you've got a range of kind of medium-sized, agencies that have been around and have long-standing customer relationships, and of course, a long tail of a lot of small agencies. Service is going to make the difference, I think. But at the top end, and particularly in corporate travel, the ability to really make big investments in technology and continued investments, as we've seen by just what everything that Americans done and what that's kind of unearthed, unleashed on the whole industry in terms of having retrofit. Perfect example of how it's the big players that really only have the capital to do it. So a lot of implications here, really interesting. So again, interesting for what's happening, but also in other cases for maybe what's not happening, or very interesting to see where that'll go this year.
Yeah, I agree, Mike. And I'll be watching out to see any customers that decide to leave, because some of the, smaller players will end up coming off as maybe a little more flexible, a little more innovative in terms of being able to do things that the huge giant now can't do because they are so big. So look out for some of the competition, maybe to steal some share there. But, a lot of news there. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, but again, GBT, the big part of their growth in this past year has been in that small to medium sized market too. So that I think some could be true, but again, some of those assumptions maybe don't hold true, like in today's world, right, where it's going in terms of the the real critical technical, again, investment systems part of the equation that really only the big players have the money to invest in. So.
Okay. Mike, the next article is a follow on from a conversation we had last week in the podcast about Boeing and their struggles. And so last week it was announced that the Boeing CEO, Dave Calhoun, is stepping down in the wake of the 737 MAX struggles reported in the Wall Street Journal. Add some context here for our viewers, if you can.
Well, I think that's our guest today will give us some good insight into that, I think, too. But again, clearly we've got huge issues. I mean, it's not just the CEO stepping down, but you have other senior leaders, also resigning, and the the work isn't done yet in terms of all of the I'd say changes that have to be made. Period. Oversight. Quality control, the list goes on. We read about it every day. That what this means though for the industry is really, to me, I mean, it's devastating if they can't get their act together, right, and start to really get into a place where they can get aircraft produced and quality work done, and it's key to the airlines are depending on their ability to meet their production deadlines. So there's a lot there, right? And I think it will be, they need a transformative leader. I mean, they definitely need somebody who's not going to come in and just do a status quo kind of gloss over issues and continue on. I mean, I think they really need to make a really critical hire here of somebody that can rebuild confidence from the entire industry. I think that's, we talked about last week, but this has certainly a headwind impact on traveler confidence, people's, confidence in aircraft and in airlines, even though as safe as the whole system basically is, and statistically so, that doesn't mean that people aren't impacted and couldn't be impacted by, continued issues. Right. So, and not to mention just, the obvious, right? We need new aircraft. We need the aircraft coming into the system. They're one of two providers. We need a strong strong and a Boeing that produces quality aircraft. But
okay, thanks, Mike. Our third article and our final article today, because I really am excited to get to our guest, is an article from the New York Times. Visa and MasterCard agree to cap their swipe fees in a settlement. And so this is a little complicated, I think, but if you could break it down and bring some clarity to our listeners, like that'd be useful.
Well, this is one of those that in of itself, people might, general public, everybody would just kind of read past this and be like, okay, big companies, something about merchant fees, saving money, maybe not. But there's a lot more here. that's about this effort to try to put some limits on what basically what Visa, MasterCard, others can charge a merchant. But that funding basically not only drives, Visa, MasterCard, Amex's, everybody's profit, Discover, et cetera, their profitability, but also gives them the money to create the rewards that everyone is so addicted to and lives on, right? And so there's a kind of a revenue stream here that, again, you follow the money, putting caps on that, putting restrictions, limits on how they can charge, what they can charge, et cetera. Okay, maybe not the worst thing. It probably won't trickle down to any real consumer benefit, but if it's something that's you could look at and go, okay, probably not a big issue. But it is a win for those, particularly Senator Durbin and others that have been working to, and the merchants that have been working to, put some limits on what they can be charged, and probably the fairness of those charges, because it tends to, some of the small merchants can get charged some pretty high, fees, and that gets hard for them to be competitive. So you can say there's some reform here that has to happen, but this is a win for that side of the equation, right? Or for the folks on that side, and that may only whet their appetite for more. And I think the issue to the industry comes back to the same issue of kind of, let's be careful about what we wish for, ask for in terms of reform on the merchant side. Yeah, make the merchants happy, but again, getting back to the consumer, I mean, we all love our perks and our rewards, and certainly the travel industry in particular really thrives off of that, all of those rewards being redeemed, and what that drives in terms of tourism and activity and flying, et cetera, et cetera. So, before we jump to the conclusion that we want to totally reform the system, just like we want to reform GDSs and we want to, like put the travel agency out of business, like, let's be careful what we wish for here. This is one that we got to keep an eye on. This is just the tip of the iceberg. There's more to come here.
Okay. Thank you for that context. Appreciate it. Mike, it's time for our first commercial break.
Yeah, so let's take a minute and talk about our sponsor, and certainly a company we've gotten to know at BLS. The Ocon family has been terrific supporters of Travel Again back when we did the project, and we're looking at industry reform. They're a great company and a brand that maybe people don't necessarily know just by name, but they're a terrific company. Their core business was serving the entertainment industry in terms of studios. They do the Grammys, they do the Oscars. They're like, that's been their core business, for part of their core business over the years. What people may not know is that they've also been serving the corporate community for a long time, and they are a terrific provider. It's like one of those, if they can make let's say actors and musicians and rock stars happy, then they certainly can handle a corporate customer well. They pride themselves on retaining the great drivers, and even through the pandemic, through the writer's strike, I mean, they retained all of their drivers and their staff, that is a huge issue when you're talking about particularly the writer's strike. They were out of, basically shut down a big part of their business for months. But their ability to do that, have that stability, and they're just, we know the family, that they're just terrific folks. And, so again, proud to have them as a sponsor, and, wanted to make sure we give them a shout out during our podcast.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. It's time for our 2-on-1 interview. And today our interview is with Brett Snyder. Brett Snyder is the president and chief airline dork of Cranky Flier LLC. He has had the airline bug since he was young. He never wanted to fly. He just loved the complexity of the business and has been able to write about that since 2006. As a kid, he never missed a chance to go to LAX and pick up airline tables. His grandmother even took him to an airport hotel for his birthday one year so he could watch the planes land. By the age of 12, he'd become a travel agent, and soon after, he was volunteering at the Traveler Aid Center. Today, his main focus is the blog Cranky Flier, along with his Cranky Concierge Air Traveler Assistance Service, Cranky Network Weekly Competitive Network Analysis, and the Cranky Network Awards. Please welcome to the stage, Brett Snyder.
Brett.
Hi guys.
Hey, thanks for coming.
Welcome, Brett.
So wait, what's that hat you're wearing?
Oh yeah, you're a Phillies fan. You're probably not gonna like that too much. Listen, it was a good series last year, though. But also, it was a great opening day for us yesterday. Diamondbacks had a nice third inning.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you got a good team. There's no question. It's gonna
do.
be it's gonna be this year. I mean, between you guys, certainly the Dodgers. Holy crap, man!
It's
they
always
loaded
the
it.
Dodgers.
Yeah,
I
I know,
know.
but they always underperform. But this is the year. Like, well, I love it. Like you guys with the Dodgers, us with the Braves. Like, it's great to that was a lot of fun. I mean,
Yeah.
we just our bats went to sleep, at with you guys in the NLCS. But man, but it was great baseball. I mean, just so much, so much fun.
It was a lot of fun, and I liked all the moves we made this offseason. I think when you're in the same division as the Dodgers, you're not trying to win the division. You're just you just need to get in the playoffs and then go from there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the Dodgers for all their build up, man, they're still beatable. I mean, they're not. Baseball is a great game that way, right? It's a long season, and it's not it's not about who spends the most. You got to spend, but not necessarily the most. That doesn't guarantee success. So
you can't be the A's, but
no,
you got to spend something. So
I feel so bad for the A's, man. I was reading about all that too, about their fan protest and all that. That's horrible. I mean,
it's a bad situation all around up there.
It is.
So
It is. Well, thank you for joining our baseball podcast.
That's right. I had no idea. This is great.
But probably we should talk airline a little bit and dig in. But man, oh man, American. I mean, I what can you say, right? I mean, I think I want to get your thoughts, but I see, again, we were really inspired by a lot of your analysis. I think you've done a terrific job, and what I love about the work you do is that it's not you bring it to life, you bring emotion, you're funny, insightful, but
fearless. You're fearless
and fearless.
Well, why not?
But also you back it up with real thoughtful and detailed analysis, which is great. And it's not just bluster. It's, you're really coming from perspective. And I thought your investor day analysis in particular was really insightful, because I think it kind of cut to the core, and it was been inspiring too, for us. And for me, I've been saying, when I've been talking to other groups, like, look, follow the money. I mean, you look at employments and you look at market cap, and it's like you've got employments where they've got the largest of the, let's say, of the four, right? American United, Delta United, and Southwest. But then you look at market cap, and you got Delta at like 27 billion and American at 9. I mean, they're a third of the market cap of Delta, and you kind of go, well, it makes you understand why they're being aggressive, because when you're fourth of four from an economic perspective, or certainly just shareholder value, they're beholden to the shareholders. Like, okay, I get why you might take an aggressive strategy, but there's strategies and there's strategies, right? And in this case, like the certainly where the industry is concerned, it's one thing to use the kind of say, hey, this is where we're going, we need to modernize, and then maybe you incent the industry to go that way. You might draw the line in the sand like they've done, and kind of said, hey, look, we're moving here, you got to come here, you have this much more time to do it. But now with this latest mileage play, where they're like basically penalizing agencies and saying, we're not, your customers are not going to get their miles unless you're one of these preferred agencies, you're doing 30% and then 50% of your business through NDC, you're, blah, 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 and it's not, it starts to be a bad experience for the whole industry, for customers, because now you've got major providers, major distributors, partners who are going to be putting, like text on their site that says, you will not get your miles here. I mean, to me, like, look, price disparity, customers are like used to shopping around. Maybe there's a price here that I didn't see here. But when you start saying like, you're not going to get your miles, I mean, yeah, that could work for some of the population where they go, okay, well, I guess I'll go book here. But it looks bad for the industry. It looks bad for American. And then they're going to lose yet more customers. I think people are going to be like, I don't know, I'll just book somebody else. I mean, I don't need this. I've got other options unless, if I live in,
Unless you
unless I
don't.
live
Yeah.
in an American hub, like I got other options, lots of them. And I'll do that instead. I don't know. Your thoughts? I mean, give me, that was a lot, but
Well, yeah, I was going to say where to start on this.
yeah,
I think American in general is an airline that has, from this perspective, of sales, TMCs, third-party distribution, whatever it may be, you have an airline that has some helpful strategic vision, but an absolutely awful implementation and execution. And I think that's the problem that we get to. I mean, when I go back to last year, right, which is really when everything sort of started here. Well, the most recent round of insanity started when they said we're going to pull 40% of the fares out of the traditional channel. When they did that, I didn't mind the announcement, because the reality is that the airlines, if they want to sell using NDC, there is opportunity for NDC to increase order value and merchandise, all the buzzwords they talk about.
Right.
They haven't actually done any of that, but there's the opportunity there for it. This is where the industry is going. It needs to happen. And it was very hard getting people to come along. The GDSs fought it tooth and nail for years because it takes away their power. And agencies fought it too, because it's work they have to do. And like, well, it works fine for us now. Why do I want to do anything? I got to spend a bunch of money on trying to figure out how to deal with this. And it takes some of the power away as well. And so when they came out and announced that, all of a sudden people started talking about it like, oh yeah, we actually need to do things. We need to make changes. And Sabre started actually putting real timelines on, hey, we're going to have this up and running. And that was great. But then to do that at the same time that you fire half of your sales staff, so you take away the help that people need in an agency environment. You take away all the people you've worked with for years and reshuffle. And now if you're lucky, you have a new account manager that might be able to help, but not really, because they're overstretched and there's no help in the transition. That was strange, to say the least. And then you get rid of your mid-market contracts, and you shed all of these people that you actually had locked in a way, and now you're saying, okay, well, we're not going to give you a deal anymore, which I understand that in a vacuum. Maybe they're not performing and all that, but you do it at the same time that you just make it harder for everyone to actually sell your tickets, and it doesn't make any sense. Yeah. And so when I saw ASTA asked for the extension until the end of the year, why would American not have taken that opportunity? Because you've already gotten the GDSs and the agencies to move. You've shocked them awake. You scared them. You have work. This has worked. You've gotten it where it is. You could easily at that point turn and say, you know what? We understand. We want to be a good partner. We know you're not quite ready yet. We're going to give you a stay of execution here. Make friends with ASTA, make friends with the agency. There are good things about NDC, but the way that American handled this makes this into just a complete and total disaster, where everyone in the agency community looks at NDC as the worst thing to happen, which is not how it should have gone.
Right. Yeah. I mean, contrast that with like on the spectrum, right? You have, Delta, who's going through a very thoughtful kind of approach of saying, like, we're not rushing into anything here. They've done extensive, like, like work with partners and distribute, like, what do you need? How does you digging into like how they process everything, like how their whole operations work, trying to understand and get to it, and they're getting ready apparently to roll out their, strategy. But even with that, it'll have, like, I'm sure, extensive, longer timelines. And to your point, they're not going to turn around and fire their entire, staff that like
Right.
works with the industry while they're doing it. Right. If anything, they're staffing up to be ready for it, and
Yeah.
moving people into roles that from within Delta to work on it. And I'm calling them out because it's just night and day in terms of the the view, their view of the industry. And I think the others all kind of fall in between somewhere, right?
Yeah, I think those are the two extremes, but United is the most interesting one for me because everything American has done in the last year could have all been done through traditional channels. They still file their fares in ATP Co. They've just decided to remove content.
Right.
But United is almost as disruptive, in some cases more so, because they have continuous pricing. But the thing about United is they're like, listen, guys, we can't do this in ATP code. There's no way that the continuous pricing that we have, this is not just buckets and fares. This is something that can't be handled. And so, we were doing this on our website. We're going to make it available to you through NDC. But, that's the only way we can do it. There's just no other way to do it. And so when you think about the impact of, there's still a lot of fares you can't find through traditional channels on United, but the rationale makes so much more sense. And also, as you said about Delta, they didn't go fire half their staff either. So, I mean, there's certainly people that are unhappy about what United's doing, but at least it's an understandable move. It makes sense in the context of what they're trying to do. This is not an option in the GDS. So, we're going to make it available to you. It's going to be NDC. You may not love it, but, at least we're going to give you that option, which is just such a different mindset. And you see airlines like Air Canada, which are really talking about relationships, and American is just really out on its own with this. And
to your point on United, I mean, what they've been saying in their customer forums and, too, is that, we'll take, if money that we would have paid to the GDS channel, we're going to take that, or at least some of it, and reinvest it back into the distribution system for those that can, make the migration, do this. Like, we'll make it worth their while to do so. I mean, to your point of like, they're kind of doing the same similar things, but they're just doing it in a way that's more, and I'd say they're also, use a racing term, but they're drafting off of like Americans,
absolutely,
aggressiveness too. It's like, great. They're doing stuff that if they were doing the stuff they're doing, to your point, they'd probably be getting a lot more grief for it, but they're not, because
they're just doing it quietly.
They're just doing it quietly, but they're also doing it within. Again, it's like, yes, there are certain things you can't do here. Okay.
Yeah.
But for the things you can, they're continuing on. And then they're also looking at more of like, how do I use the carrot to move people less than the stick? Right. It's like that. It's just.
Right. It's not the across the board, we're just going to pull 40% of our fares. I mean, they pull basic economy fine. Totally.
Nobody's crying over that.
No, well, maybe somebody is. I don't know who it is. But that's not really an issue. I mean, that's okay. But they'd be stupid to not draft off American, right? I mean, hey, American, keep going, please go to your death. And in the unlikely chance that this is the right way, then we'll just quietly do it, and we'll be happy about it. So I mean, what American's doing is the best thing these guys could ever ask for, because they just can sit there and watch them and follow along if it works. Yeah, it is a gift. But this goes back to what you're talking about with market cap. I mean, American underperforms financially, and so they think they need to take bigger steps to try and solve that problem. But this again goes to the execution. I mean, United is using a more sophisticated pricing system to find ways to extract more revenue. Right? American is still focused on cost. Like, somehow the cost of selling in the GDS is going to save its hide, which it's not. It's a revenue problem, and they're hurting themselves with this. And a lot of the things they say of, our order value is so much higher when people book direct and all this. It's like, well, yeah, because you guys don't sell seats in the GDS. You pulled out your main plus, main select, whatever the bundles like that could easily be sold in ATP Co or in the GDS. They pulled those out. You can't sell it. So, the upsell opportunity is not even there. So you're creating your own result.
Right. Yeah, it is illogical, right? It doesn't add up.
It is. And then the mileage thing.
Yeah. I mean, that I just think that's
even stranger.
Yeah.
That one I really don't understand. I mean, you guys in the news section, you were talking about consolidation with Carlson, right? But this pushes consolidation. American says it doesn't, but they've said, the three requirements here for being a preferred agency. One, you have to hit these ever increasing numbers of NDC sales, but then two, you have to have an incentive agreement with them, which
right.
I don't understand. If I'm selling through NDC as you want, and I don't have an incentive agreement, so you don't have to pay me commission, why are you penalizing me? You're getting more money from me. Why is this a thing? It doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't. That to me, again, I just trying to look through the customer lens, right? The ultimate, the traveler, the corporation. And I'm just like, again, you can aggressive, yes, but you can kind of understand, like, if I step back and say, look, NDC's over 10 years in the making, the industry, like you said, pushed back, didn't adapt. This was the slowest moving freight train coming at you in history, right? You've seen it coming forever and ever.
Yep.
It's like, and then it comes and everyone's like, oh my God, it's like, well, no, it shouldn't have been an, oh my God. I mean, it shouldn't have been I can't believe this is happening now, and I understand was there frustration potentially at the fact that, the industry didn't adapt, did push back for all the, things. Yes, but still, I get that. I get, on a spectrum, right, of aggressiveness, I get all the but then that I just don't. I see this as being like, again, as negative as the things were today. I think this is that one step over the line kind of thing. I just, man, it just feels like it's going to create a mess.
It already has.
It has, but I mean, but there's a delayed reaction from the customer, right?
Yeah,
still coming, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is the hard part about this to me is that, again, it's an execution of it all, and maybe it's by design. It just kind of confirms that what American says is not what they mean, because when they make this big announcement and then they say you have to be a preferred agency, and then they don't put out a list. And so all the customers come and say, oh, are you a preferred agency? I mean, they sent this to their customers. They sent it out. Are you a preferred agency? I don't know. Maybe. I'll let you know next month or whenever. I mean, and something like that is either poor execution or it's evil by design to try and, sow doubt with customers and make them book direct. Either way, it's bad. This is the story of American. It's just everything is contradicting what they say or is just poorly executed in this space, and it's crazy, and I don't know how people continue to navigate this because I pull my hair out every day.
It feels like this is all either going to be hailed as genius in the future or crash and burn. It doesn't feel like a middle ground.
Oh no, I mean, that's kind of the hallmark of Chief Commercial Officer Vasu Raja, right? He goes big. He does not have small dreams. And so, this is either going to anoint him as some genius or it will be the end of his stint at American. So, but again, the strategy points are not really the issue. It's the execution and implementation of it that is just so mind-boggling. I mean, you can understand what they're trying to do with some of this, but how they do it is where it's just a head scratcher.
Yeah. Wow. So, and speaking of moving from one mess to yet another one, Boeing, any thoughts? I mean, man, I said in the earlier part, man, I mean, this is this is a major undertaking for a new leader to come in, I think.
It is. So we this is the third episode of a new podcast that I'm doing now called The Air Show, which we didn't talk about here in the beginning intro here, but I'm doing that with Brian Summers, journalist, and then John Ostrower, who has been covering Boeing broken stories since the early days of the 787 and all that. So we just did this week on The Air Show, we did a deeper dive into Boeing, and I think John's point, well, he has a lot of great points, but it's really the airlines finally forced their hand, because these are the ones buying airplanes and they're just not able to get them. And it's been years and years of problems. I mean, this has been well documented, right? We've all watched Boeing's problems for so long. But once the airline said, listen, we need to talk to the board without the CEO, and we need our airplanes, and this is just not working, and something needs to change, finally forced their hand.
Yeah.
And they made a change, but the change isn't done. And that's, as you're saying, you need a strong leader. John mentioned on our show that he thinks they need to find someone that knows Boeing, someone with experience in Boeing, because it's such a complex organization that it would be hard for someone else to come in and really be able to wrangle it. So, maybe it's not the biggest list of potential candidates, but man, do they need someone to come in and right that ship. It is a brutal situation over there. But on the other hand, they kind of define too big to fail. They're not going anywhere.
No, I mean, just as a country, we can't afford it. I mean, they can't.
It's defense contract as well as the commercial stuff. I mean, they're just an enormous company and hugely important to the economic success as well. I mean, the number of airplanes they sell outside our borders, I mean, in terms of trade, they're just so important. But it's not healthy right now, and something needs to happen. I don't we'll see where it goes, but at least they're finally doing something to clean house. It's incredible that it's taken this long. Even when Dave Calhoun took over before, he was the board chair. He was still in charge of, a lot of these high level decisions that are going on at this company when it was going so poorly, and they still turned to him. So there's a lot of criticism then. Now it's just wait and see. Like, great, this has happened, but now what?
Wow. Well, you guys will for sure. We will be, following it really close, because again, talk about fundamental kind of impact, factors that drive our industry. This is certainly one of them. And
absolutely. And you think about, Southwest still having to take the Max 8s because they can't get the 7 in there, and that makes it tougher for them. It's too much capacity, which good for travelers, maybe lower fares because it's too much capacity, but makes them think about how they serve markets. And United can't get the 10, which is supposed to be their domestic 757 replacement, nice premium transcon, and all these kind of things that are being held up because of just a Boeing trail of fail. That the relationship with the FAA is so bad, and they can't get anything done, and irrational decisions are being made that are impacting airlines, and a lot of that is not necessarily because this is the right decision that should be made. It's just that this is what they kind of have to do from a certification standpoint, because they've been pushed into this corner of incompetence and failure on all sides. But it's just bad, and it needs to change.
Yeah. So switching gears a little bit, I watched the video recap of your annual Cranky Network Awards, and enjoyed the kind of the insider view of the industry. What we love about it is that you kind of a little tongue in cheek and poking fun, but also recognizing good performance and positive things too, and but having some fun with it. But it definitely looked like everybody appreciates it. Tell us a little bit about the award and the origins, and then I want to ask you about some of the best parts of the night. But go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, so we started this during the pandemic, and it was 2021. We just did a virtual show. It was me and Courtney Miller from Visual Approach, and we ended up just trying to honor the airlines with an award show. It's network planning, and it's focused
Right.
on the U.S. and Canada. And really, when you think about those teams, they're some of the most desirable people that people want to talk to because they decide where the airplanes go, right? And that's, I mean,
Yeah.
that's huge. Airport cities, everyone wants to talk to them. And so many of the different events, they're the star of the show, but they're being bombarded by people. It's,
Right.
you'll often hear it called speed dating. It's, you're sitting with airports and talking to them, but everyone wants to talk to the airlines, vendors, whoever it is, that's what they want. And so we wanted to create something that was really for them, for the
Right.
people doing the work, and not something where they're just going to get, bombarded all the time. And I'm not saying these other events are bad. These are important. They matter. But,
Yeah.
something where they're the stars of the show and they can enjoy it and relax and have a good time. And so that's what it really came out of. And it's been great. And we get really good participation from the airlines, sending both people that lead their teams, but also some of the analysts that do the work, and they get to come get recognized for it.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun.
Well, that was just personally, my favorite part was just that. Like, I always think of, I mean, Ed and I worked, at GBTA, focused on travel buyers, right? Another very underappreciated group of people who are
Yeah.
like air traffic controllers dealing with like, travelers and agencies and their suppliers and
Yep.
then senior execs calling up and yelling at them because their flight was late. I mean, they do it all, right?
Yep.
I mean, I'll be literally sitting in meetings with them and people in board meetings, and they're like doing that work, and then they're sitting there because their CEO's wait list isn't clearing, and they're like, I mean, it's just like, so again, to your point of like, sometimes calling out these groups of people who are the kind of the silent heroes that do a lot of the work, and to your point, planning people, like, they don't get a lot of recognition or any, the rest of the year. So I just think it's great. It was really, really, it's just fun to watch. Like, some of the insider stuff is funny. It's just interesting, but best moment of the night, your favorite part, anything that comes to mind?
I think maybe the funniest was, so the best new destination this year was Tulum, which is a new airport, right? So best new destination is a city that is getting service for the first time in at least 5 years and has no service from the US and Canada.
Wow. Yeah.
So Tulum obviously was new this year because it's a brand new airport. But we made the joke, we have our normal trophies. We actually did like smaller trophies that went to all the different airlines that announced service. So we said, here's your piece of the trophy, here's your piece. And then they came up, and this is entirely unprompted, but they started saying things like, well, we were the first to announce service. And then someone else came up and said, well, we're the largest to Latin America. And someone, well, we may be the last, but we're going to be the best. And it was just a really funny moment where they just started kind of riffing off of each other up there. So that was really funny. That was great. The candid moments are the best. We certainly don't show them all on that video.
Yeah.
But it is a lot of fun.
Well, we'll be bugging you for our invite for next year so we can come sit in the back and watch. So
we do have sponsorship opportunities. So I'll connect you with my people.
Well, Brett, thanks a lot for joining us. Love your insight. We'll certainly keep in touch. Maybe we'll probably have you back when American does their next announcement.
I was gonna say, listen, I don't want to come back because that means there's more bad stuff to talk about. I would rather not come back and everything's great.
Well, we'll come back when NDC is fully implemented and Boeing is all fixed, and then we'll
I don't think NDC will be fully implemented until they come out with NNDC, like the new distribution, and then we have to start over again.
Yeah,
start from scratch.
Well, XML is not exactly new.
No. Well, yeah.
But yeah, I'm happy to come back anytime.
Newer. They should call it newer.
Newer
distribution.
That's right.
Thank you so much, Brett. Brett Snyder is president of Cranky Flier LLC. You can catch his weekly newsletter and new podcast. And thank you again, Brett, for being on our show.
Thanks
Go
for having me
Phillies.
on. Nah, go Diamondbacks.
Oh.
All right, cheers. All right, another great guest. Mike, time for a quick commercial break. Last week, we held another Travel Again Roadshow. It's our second event, and this one was again in New York City at the Omni Hotel Berkshire Place. And the Omni Berkshire Hotel Place is it's a fantastic location. It's a great place to host. They take amazing care of everyone who comes. The staff are on top of everything. They really are an iconic hotel in New York, and they made us feel so good being there and took great care of all of us. So a big shout out and a big thank you to Omni Berkshire for their sponsorship of Travel Again and for making us feel at home at their wonderful spot. All right, Mike, and now we're going to wrap up with the headwinds and tailwinds, where I identify what we think is adding value to travel or taking it away. So what's your headwind, Mike? What's slowing us down?
Well, unfortunately, it's an easy one. I'm going with American and their decision to make mileage an issue, right? And I think it's bad for the industry, bad for customers. It's going to create, I think, a negative impact on American when, like we talked about earlier, you have, websites, distributors who are going to be putting messaging talking about, you don't get your miles here. I mean, I just don't see how that is positive in any fashion. I don't think it's going to have the desired result. So, I think it just makes our industry look bad. I mean, what we do behind the curtain, is one thing, but when it impacts the customer in a real visible way, I just think it reflects poorly. And I think it's an ill-advised move at this point, but we shall see.
Okay. All right. And your tailwind, what's speeding us up?
Well, United, I think, is doing something, again, positive use of kind of AI type tools, but just a logical kind of smart thing. In fact, we've been asking for, and as travelers, probably for a long time, which is when you have a cancellation, a disruption, a delay of any kind with a flight, giving some additional information. And there was an article about how they're trying to make their messaging more comprehensive, a little more like, instead of just saying your flight is delayed, saying, hey, your flight is delayed because of a weather issue over, Iowa that was affecting inbound flights. And, we apologize for the delay. We'll keep you posted. I mean, a much more thoughtful message, and one that will, it's better for United staff. I mean, when people have information, what's the first thing they do? There's a delay. Well, then everybody's going around asking, trying to talk to staff, trying to call. It's like, no, some things are just inevitable. Like, things happen, there are delays, there are weather issues, there are mechanical issues, et cetera, et cetera. But if I have a little more information as a customer, I think it brings the anxiety down, and then, people feel a little more informed. I just think it's smart, good use of tech. The more comprehensive you can be, the better. And I think, travelers will appreciate it.
Okay. Next, Mike. My headwind this week
Yeah,
is
what's yours?
something that is referred to in the industry. Yes, so mine is called AI washing, and it's similar in nature to something called greenwashing. So when you think you're doing something really good for the environment, as promoted by a company or a corporation, and it's really just corporate talk, you're not really doing anything good. And the same thing is happening in AI, where just because a company says that something is now AI powered, or they've introduced AI into their product, it doesn't necessarily mean anything at all. And I've seen a few companies lately releasing features or little featurelets and then saying, I'm now an AI powered company, and even raising money or more money, getting a higher valuation because of it. Now, I think we're really, kind of nearing that Gartner hype cycle phase of the trough of disillusionment, they call it. We're just past that peak of inflated expectation. And so all I have to say here is just, buyer beware in the marketplace in terms of what your expectation is and what people tell you they're doing. And so that's really my headwind for this week. My tailwind is something that got reported in The Verge and a few other places. And I'm going to quote a bit of it. It was an aviation startup, Boom Supersonic. It took a major step towards the goal of returning to commercial supersonic aviation in the skies.
Be awesome.
The company has a prototype aircraft called the XB-1, and it left the ground for the first time last week. And look, it took a short, subsonic flight over the Mojave Desert, and Boom is expected to continue to make progress in this area. There are other startups that are working on supersonic flight. Look, anytime we get to go anywhere faster, that's the definition of tailwind. And I'm excited to see supersonic flight, kind of take off in the industry again. I think it's time, that we really dig in there and try to see what we can do with supersonic travel.
Well, I had the honor of flying on the Concorde a handful of times, and I'll tell you, it would be great. I mean, talk about something to just be great for the industry and great to bring that back. I think there's maybe it's not quite space travel, but it definitely feels like a bit of that, right? Where you're, it's a bit of the aspirational kind of dreaming part of it of imagine being from, like it was the old New York to London in 3 hours or whatever. It's it's just amazing. Like, you could be there for dinner, and not and no jet lag, it's just kind of it's really great. That's a good call out. I hope they keep moving ahead. Be great.
We'll keep an eye out for progress there. And Mike, that's all for our show today. Thanks again to our sponsors, BLS and Omni Berkshire Place. We will see you again back here in approximately 2 weeks. And thanks again to our listeners. Bye, Mike.
And thanks for dialing in from spring break.